Why did my husband's face fall when he saw me brush my hand down my ex's arm during our wedding dance? How could a single careless touch unravel everything I thought I controlled, sending shockwaves through my marriage, my family, and my carefully crafted reputation? The real question: how far would he go to turn the humiliation back on me when everyone believed I was the victim? I brushed my hand down my ex's arm during the wedding dance, and my husband's expression dropped like a stone into still water. The moment happened so fast, Felix spinning me during the group dance, my palm sliding down his bicep in what I told myself was just muscle memory from our college days. But even as I rationalized it, I felt Dorian's eyes burning into us from across the reception hall. "Lunelle," Felix whispered, his breath warm against my ear as the music swelled. "You look incredible tonight." I should have stepped back, should have remembered the gold band barely settled on my finger, the vows I'd spoken just hours earlier. Instead, I let my fingers linger on his arm, feeling the familiar strength beneath his tuxedo sleeve. "Felix, we shouldn't—" But my protest sounded weak even to my own ears. When the song ended and I finally looked toward the head table, Dorian was watching with an expression I'd never seen before, like he was already grieving something that hadn't even begun. Our first dance as a married couple happened 20 minutes later, and his hands felt different against my back, distant, cold. "You seem to enjoy that dance with Felix," he said quietly as we swayed to our wedding song. "It was nothing, Dorian, just old friends catching up." The lie tasted bitter on my tongue, but I forced a smile for the photographer circling us like a vulture. "Right, old friends." His voice carried a weight that made my stomach clench. The rest of our wedding reception passed in a blur of forced smiles and hollow congratulations. I caught my mother, Vivienne, watching me with knowing eyes as she sipped champagne near the bar. "Darling," she said later, cornering me near the ladies' room, "I saw you dancing with that handsome trainer of yours. Felix, wasn't it?" "Mom, please, it's my wedding day. I'm just saying, marriage is about compromise. If Dorian can't appreciate what he has—" She let the sentence hang, her perfectly manicured fingers adjusting my veil. "Well, you deserve to be happy, Lunelle." Her words planted a seed I didn't want to acknowledge. 3 months later, I found myself staring at that same wedding video on my laptop in our suburban kitchen. Nora, our 9-year-old daughter, was at school, and Dorian was teaching his morning classes. The house felt too quiet, too empty. On screen, I watched myself lean into Felix's embrace, saw the way my body curved toward his with practiced familiarity. It meant nothing, I told myself for the 100th time, just muscle memory. But when I replayed Dorian's face in that moment, the way his jaw tightened, his shoulders sagged, I felt something twist in my chest. Guilt, maybe. Or was it something else entirely? My phone buzzed with a text from Felix. "Great session yesterday. Same time Thursday." I'd started training with him again 6 weeks after the wedding. For my health, I'd told Dorian. To get back in shape after all the wedding stress. He'd simply nodded, already retreating into the shell he'd been building around himself since our honeymoon. "Sure," I typed back, then deleted it, typed it again, sent it before I could change my mind. That evening, Dorian came home later than usual. His tie was loosened, his usually neat hair disheveled. He moved through our kitchen like a ghost, barely acknowledging my attempts at conversation. "How was your day?" I asked, setting down his plate of reheated dinner. "Fine." He didn't look up from his phone. "The Hendersons invited us to their barbecue this weekend. I thought we could—" "I'm grading papers this weekend." His dismissal stung more than it should have. "You're always grading papers, Dorian. When was the last time we actually talked?" Finally, he looked at me. Really looked. "What would you like to talk about, Lunelle? Your gym sessions, your new workout routine?" There was something in his tone that made my blood run cold. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing. Forget I said anything." He stood, leaving his dinner untouched. "I'm going to my study." After he left, I found myself staring at the business card that had fallen from his jacket pocket when he'd hung it over his chair. Marcus Sullivan, attorney at law. Divorce and family law. My hand shook as I held the card. When had he gotten this? Why did he have it? I shoved it back where I'd found it, but the damage was done. The seed my mother had planted at our wedding was sprouting, and I could feel its roots spreading through the cracks in my marriage. The gym became my sanctuary. Every Tuesday and Thursday at 11, I'd drive the 15 minutes to Fitness First, telling myself I was investing in my health. Felix would be waiting by the free weights, his smile brightening when he saw me approach. "There's my favorite client," he'd say, and I'd feel that familiar flutter in my stomach. "I'm probably your only client who can barely bench press the bar," I'd laugh, falling into our easy rhythm. "Quality over quantity, Lunelle. Besides, you're stronger than you think." The compliments came naturally from him. Unlike Dorian, who seemed to notice everything I did wrong and nothing I did right, Felix made me feel seen, appreciated, alive. "You've been distracted lately," Felix observed during our Thursday session, spotting me through a set of squats. "Everything okay at home?" I should have deflected, should have maintained the boundary between trainer and client. Instead, I found myself opening up. "Dorian's been distant since the wedding. I feel like I'm married to a stranger." "That's rough." His hand steadied my elbow as I struggled with the weight. "Marriage shouldn't make you feel invisible." "Exactly." The validation felt like water in a desert. I try to talk to him, but he just shuts down, goes to his study, grades papers, acts like I don't exist. "You deserve better than that, Lunelle." Those words echoed in my head as I drove home, as I prepared dinner for a husband who barely spoke to me, as I tucked Nora into bed while Dorian worked late in his study again. At the insurance office, where I worked as a claims analyst, I found myself sharing more than I should with my coworker, Janet McCall. "Marriage is hard," Janet said over lunch at our usual cafe. "But you seem, I don't know, happier lately." "I've been working out more, taking care of myself." The half-truth slipped out easily. "Good for you. Mike barely notices when I get my hair done, let alone if I lose weight." She laughed, but there was bitterness in it. "Men, right?" "Right." But even as I agreed, I thought about how Felix noticed everything. The new highlights in my hair, the way I'd started wearing makeup to our sessions, the perfume I'd switched to because he'd complimented it once. The lies multiplied like cancer cells. I told Dorian I was working late when I was having coffee with Felix after our sessions. I told Janet I was dealing with family issues when I took long lunches to meet him at Bistro Cafe. I told myself I was just enjoying friendship when Felix's hand lingered on mine across the table. "You light up when you laugh," he said one afternoon, his thumb tracing circles on my knuckles. "I bet you don't laugh much at home." "Not lately, no." The admission felt like betrayal, but also like relief. "Life's too short to be unhappy, Lunelle." That evening, I came home to find Dorian in the kitchen, actually cooking dinner for once. Nora was setting the table, chattering about her day at school. "Daddy's making spaghetti," she announced when she saw me. "The good kind, with the sauce from scratch." "How nice," I said, but the domestic scene felt forced, performative. "How was your workout?" Dorian asked without turning from the stove. "Fine. Good. Felix says I'm making real progress." Felix says a lot of things, apparently. There it was again, that edge in his voice that made my skin crawl. What's that supposed to mean? "Nothing, Lunelle, just making conversation." But it wasn't nothing. I could feel him watching me throughout dinner, studying my face when I checked my phone, noting when I excused myself to respond to Felix's texts. Later that night, I caught him writing in a small notebook at the kitchen table. "What's that?" I asked, trying to peer over his shoulder. He closed it quickly. "Just work stuff, lesson plans." But I'd seen enough to know it wasn't lesson plans. It was dates, times, notes written in his careful teacher's handwriting. "Dorian, are we okay?" The question tumbled out before I could stop it. He looked at me for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Are we, Lunelle? I don't know what you want me to say. I want you to say whatever's true. The weight of his words hung between us like a challenge. I could have confessed then, could have told him about the coffee dates, the lingering touches, the way Felix made me feel like myself again. Instead, I chose the easier path. I'm trying to be better, to take care of myself. I thought you'd be happy about that. I am happy when you're happy, he said quietly. I just wonder what's making you so happy lately. That night, I lay awake listening to his breathing, wondering when we'd become strangers sharing a bed. When had he started watching me like I was a suspect instead of his wife? And why did that make me want to run to Felix even more? Sunday dinners at Gina's house had always been a minefield, but they'd gotten worse since the wedding. Dorian's mother had a way of making her disapproval known without saying a word. The way she hugged Nora a little too long, asked Dorian about work with exaggerated concern, and offered me seconds on dessert with a smile that never reached her eyes. Lunelle's been spending a lot of time at the gym, Dorian mentioned casually as we sat around Gina's dining table, cutting into her famous pot roast. That's wonderful, dear, Gina said, but her tone suggested it was anything but wonderful. It's important to stay active. She's working with a personal trainer, Dorian continued, and I felt heat creep up my neck. Felix Trenton, they went to college together. Tristan, Dorian's younger brother, looked up from his plate with interest. Felix Trenton? Didn't he used to date? We were friends, I interrupted quickly. Years ago. He's helping me get back in shape. How nice, Gina said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. It's always good to reconnect with old friends. The emphasis she put on old friends made me want to crawl under the table. Felix is a certified trainer, I said defensively. He knows what he's doing. I'm sure he does, Dorian murmured, and there was something in his voice that made everyone at the table go quiet. Nora, bless her, broke the tension by launching into a story about her art project at school. But I could feel the undercurrents of judgment flowing around the table like poison. After dinner, while Gina and I cleared dishes, she cornered me in the kitchen. Lunelle, honey, I hope you know what you're doing. I'm getting exercise, Gina. That's what I'm doing. She handed me a plate to rinse. It's just that Dorian seems stressed lately, and Nora mentioned that you've been coming home later than usual. Nora shouldn't be discussing our schedule with anyone, I snapped. She's worried about her parents. Children pick up on tension. There's no tension. Everything's fine. But even as I said it, I could hear the falseness in my voice. Gina heard it too, if the look she gave me was any indication. The real explosion came 2 days later at Bistro Cafe. I was having lunch with Felix, nothing inappropriate, just two friends catching up over salads and iced tea. We'd chosen a corner table away from the main dining area, but apparently not far enough away. I've been thinking about what you said last week, Felix was saying, his hand covering mine on the table, about feeling trapped in your marriage. I didn't say trapped exactly. But that's what you meant, right? You're too young to settle for being unhappy. His thumb was stroking my wedding ring, and I should have pulled away, should have remembered where we were, who might see us. Instead, I let myself sink into the warmth of his attention. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if we'd stayed together in college, I admitted. I think about that too. His voice was low, intimate. We were good together, Lunelle, really good. That's when I saw him, Dorian standing in the doorway of the cafe like an avenging angel, his face pale with fury. Our eyes met across the room, and I jerked my hand away from Felix's like I'd been burned. Shit, I whispered. Felix turned to see what I was looking at, and his face went white. Is that my husband? Yes. Dorian walked toward our table with measured steps, his teacher's training keeping his voice calm and controlled, even as his world imploded. Hello, Lunelle. Felix. Dorian, I stammered. I didn't expect. What are you doing here? Having lunch, like you, apparently. His eyes moved between us, taking in the intimate seating, our guilty expressions, the way Felix's hand was still halfway across the table. Don't let me interrupt. Look, man, Felix started, standing up with his hands raised. This isn't what it looks like. Really? What does it look like? The question hung in the air like a blade. Other diners were starting to notice the tension, conversations quieting as they sensed drama brewing. We're just friends, I said quickly. Felix was helping me with what, Lunelle? Your marriage problems? Dorian's voice was still calm, but there was steel underneath. Because that's what this looks like to me. My wife having an intimate lunch with her ex-boyfriend, discussing how trapped she feels in her marriage. You were listening? The accusation slipped out before I could stop it. I didn't need to listen. Your body language said everything. Felix stepped closer to Dorian, his chest puffed out. Hey, back off. You don't get to talk to her like that. I don't get to talk to my wife? Dorian's eyebrows rose. Interesting perspective. If you were any kind of husband, she wouldn't need... Wouldn't need what? You? The confrontation was escalating beyond anything I'd imagined. People were openly staring now, some holding up phones to record the drama unfolding in their quiet lunch spot. Stop it, both of you, I hissed, but they weren't listening. You want to know what kind of husband I am? Dorian asked, his voice finally rising. I'm the kind who works 2 jobs to support his family, who coaches Little League on weekends and helps with homework every night, who's been watching his wife lie to his face for months while she plays house with her personal trainer. Dorian, please. I'm the kind of husband who found hotel receipts in your gym bag, Lunelle. Who knows you've been charging dinners to our credit card when you're supposedly working late? Who's been documenting every lie you've told for the past 6 weeks? The words hit me like physical blows. Hotel receipts? I'd only been to Felix's apartment twice and we'd just talked, You've been spying on me. I've been protecting myself. And our daughter. Felix made the mistake of putting his hand on Dorian's shoulder. Look, you're obviously upset, but you need to calm down. Dorian spun around, and for a moment I thought he might actually hit Felix. Instead, he stepped back and pulled out his phone. Don't touch me again, he said quietly. In fact, don't come near my wife or my family again. Or what? Felix sneered, emboldened by the audience. Or I'll call the police and report you for harassment. Harassment? Are you kidding me? That's when Felix shoved him. Not hard, but enough to make Dorian stumble back a step. Enough to cross a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Dorian straightened his shirt, looked directly at the nearest person holding a phone, and said clearly, Did everyone see that? This man just assaulted me. Then he actually called the police. The video went viral in our small community within hours. Husband confronts wife's affair partner at local restaurant, spread through Facebook groups and neighborhood apps like wildfire. By evening, my phone was buzzing with calls and messages I couldn't bring myself to answer. Dorian moved out that night. I watched from our bedroom window as he loaded boxes into his car, Nora clinging to his leg and crying. He knelt down to her level, speaking in the gentle voice he reserved for her, but I couldn't hear the words through the glass. Daddy, why can't you stay? Her voice carried across the driveway, breaking my heart. I'll see you very soon, sweetheart, I promise. Daddy just needs to stay somewhere else for a little while. Because of Mommy? The pause before his answer told me everything. Because Mommy and Daddy need some time to figure things out. I should have gone outside, should have fought for my family, explained that nothing had really happened between Felix and me. Instead, I hid behind the curtains like a coward, watching my husband drive away with half our life packed in cardboard boxes. My mother arrived an hour later with wine and righteous indignation. He's being completely unreasonable, Vivienne declared, settling into our living room like she owned it. So you had lunch with an old friend. So what? Men have lunch with female colleagues all the time. It wasn't just lunch, Mum. What wasn't it then? Did you sleep with this Felix person? The question hung in the air. Technically, no. We'd kissed twice, once in his apartment, once in his car after a training session. We'd talked about more, planned more, but we hadn't actually crossed that final line. No, I said finally. We didn't sleep together. Then Dorian is overreacting. He's always been controlling, darling. Remember how he insisted you quit your job when Nora was born? How he monitors your spending? She was rewriting history, but I let her. It felt good to be the victim instead of the villain, even if I knew it wasn't entirely true. The next morning brought fresh humiliation. Janet cornered me in the break room at work, her eyes bright with gossip. Lunelle, honey, I saw the video. Are you okay? What video? But I knew exactly what video. The one from Bistro. It's all over the community Facebook page. That man you were with, is he really your trainer? I could see the calculation in her eyes, remembering all the times I'd mentioned Felix, all the long lunches I'd taken, all the overtime I'd claimed while leaving early. It's complicated, Janet. I bet it is. Her sympathy was paper-thin. Well, if you need to talk. But I could tell she was already composing the text she'd send to the other office gossips. Poor Lunelle's marriage is falling apart. Did you see her husband's face in that video? And that trainer of hers, quite handsome, isn't he? The walls were closing in from every direction. At home, Nora asked constant questions about when Daddy was coming back. At work, conversation stopped when I entered rooms. At the gym, other members stared and whispered behind their hands. Felix, the man I'd risked everything for, was nowhere to be found. His apartment was empty when I drove by after work. The gym manager told me he'd taken a leave of absence and wouldn't be back indefinitely. His phone went straight to voicemail. He'd vanished the moment things got complicated, leaving me to face the consequences alone. Thursday afternoon brought the biggest shock yet. I was called into HR, where Sandra Martinez sat behind her desk with a folder thick with papers. Lunelle, we need to discuss some discrepancies in your timesheet. My stomach dropped. Discrepancies. Your overtime claims for the past 2 months don't match your keycard records. On several occasions, you claim to be working late when the system shows you left the building before 5. The evidence was damning. Timestamps showing me leaving early on days I'd claimed overtime. Security footage of empty offices during hours I'd supposedly been working late. All those afternoons with Felix, all those extended lunches, all those lies catching up to me at once. There must be some mistake. We also have reports that you've been using company time for personal matters. Extended lunch breaks, personal phone calls during work hours, unauthorized absences. Janet. It had to be Janet protecting herself by throwing me under the bus. I can explain. We're conducting a full investigation. Until it's complete, you're suspended without pay. I drove home in a daze, my career crumbling along with my marriage. The house felt like a tomb, too quiet without Dorian's presence, too empty without Nora's laughter. She was spending the week at Gina's house. Just until things settled down, Dorian had said through his lawyer. His lawyer. My husband was communicating with me through a lawyer now. That's when I found the divorce papers in my mailbox, thick as a novel, and twice as devastating. The petition was methodical, clinical, brutal in its thoroughness. Irreconcilable differences. Adultery. Abandonment of marital responsibilities. Request for primary custody of minor child. Attached were exhibits that made my blood run cold. Bank statements showing charges at restaurants I'd visited with Felix. Hotel receipts I didn't even remember. Credit card records documenting every lie I'd told. Photos from the bistro confrontation. Screenshots of text messages between Felix and me that somehow Dorian had obtained. There was even a statement from Nora's school counselor documenting her declining grades and behavioral changes over the past month. I was being dissected with surgical precision, every mistake catalogued and documented for legal consumption. This wasn't the impulsive reaction of a wounded husband. This was a campaign, planned and executed with the methodical patience of a high school teacher who knew how to build a case. As I sat in my empty kitchen, surrounded by the wreckage of my choices, I realized I'd never really known my husband at all. The quiet, mild-mannered man I'd taken for granted had been watching, waiting, preparing for this moment while I'd been playing games with Felix. And now I was about to discover just how far Dorian would go to turn my humiliation back on me. The law office of Marcus Sullivan was everything I'd expected: mahogany furniture, leather-bound books, and an atmosphere of expensive competence. I sat across from the divorce attorney my mother had found, trying to project confidence I didn't feel. "Mrs. Harker," Sullivan said, reviewing the papers Dorian had filed. "I have to be honest with you. This is going to be challenging." "Challenging how?" "Your husband's attorney has built a comprehensive case. The evidence of infidelity is substantial, and the documentation of your financial irregularities at work complicates things further." "I never actually slept with Felix," I said, for the 100th time. "That may not matter. The court will look at the pattern of deception, the emotional affair, the impact on your daughter, and now with your suspension from work." The words hit like hammer blows. My suspension had become termination after HR's investigation concluded. 14 years with the company, gone because I couldn't keep my lies straight. "What about custody?" Sullivan's pause told me everything. "We'll fight for joint custody, but given the circumstances, supervised visitation might be the best we can hope for initially." "Supervised? I'm her mother. You're also currently unemployed, facing potential fraud charges, and documented as having an extramarital affair. The court's primary concern will be Nora's welfare." I left the law office feeling like I'd been gutted. Outside, the autumn air was crisp and clean, mocking the mess I'd made of my life. I drove aimlessly through town, past the gym where this had all started, past Bistro, where it had all exploded, past the elementary school where Nora should have been but wasn't because she was staying with Dorian and his mother. My phone rang. Tristan's name appeared on the screen. "Hello?" I answered, desperate for any human contact that wasn't hostile. "Lunelle, we need to talk." His voice was cold, nothing like the easygoing brother-in-law I'd known for years. "Tristan, thank God. I've been trying to reach Dorian, but he won't." "That's what I'm calling about. You need to stop." "Stop what?" "Stop calling him. Stop showing up at Mum's house. Stop trying to manipulate Nora when she calls you." The accusation stung because it held a grain of truth. I had been pumping Nora for information during our brief supervised phone calls. Where was Daddy staying? What did Grandma Gina say about Mommy? Was he sad? "I'm not manipulating anyone. I'm trying to save my family." "Your family?" Tristan's laugh was bitter. "You destroyed your family, Lunelle. With your lies, your cheating, your complete disregard for everyone who loved you." "It wasn't like that." "It was exactly like that. Do you know what Nora asked me yesterday? She asked if it was her fault that Mommy and Daddy don't live together anymore. A 9-year-old girl thinks she's responsible for your affair." The words were like a physical blow. I never meant for her to get hurt. But she did get hurt, and she's still getting hurt every time you try to drag her into your drama with Dorian. "Where is he, Tristan? I need to talk to him." "He's where you can't find him, where you can't hurt him anymore." The line went dead, leaving me alone with my guilt and the growing realization that I'd lost more than just my husband. I'd lost his entire family. People who'd welcomed me, supported me, loved me for 15 years. That evening, I drove to Felix's apartment complex one more time, hoping against hope that he'd returned. The parking lot was full of cars I didn't recognize. His unit was dark, a for rent sign already posted in the window. I called his number again, listening to the automated message that his voicemail was full. He'd disappeared completely, leaving no forwarding address, no explanation, no apology for abandoning me when I needed him most. The man I'd risked everything for had vanished like smoke the moment real consequences appeared. I was scrolling through my phone, looking for someone, anyone, who might still be willing to talk to me, when I realized how short the list had become. Janet at work was avoiding me. My gym friends had scattered after the bistro incident. Even my mother's support was wavering as the legal bills mounted and the reality of my situation became clear. I was alone in a way I'd never been before, surrounded by the wreckage of choices I couldn't undo. The court date was set for the following month. As I sat in my empty house, I tried to prepare for what was coming. But how do you prepare to have your life dissected in public? How do you defend choices you're no longer sure you understand yourself? Outside, the first snow of winter began to fall, covering the world in a blanket of white that made everything look clean and new. I pressed my face to the window and wished I could start over, wished I could take back every lie, every betrayal, every moment I'd chosen my own selfish desires over the people who loved me. But wishes don't change facts, and the facts were about to be laid bare in a courtroom where my husband, the man I'd underestimated so completely, would finally have his day. The courthouse smelled like industrial disinfectant and broken dreams. I sat at the defendant's table in my best conservative suit, trying to look like a responsible mother and wife, while my lawyer shuffled through papers with the air of a man who knew he was fighting a losing battle. Across the aisle, Dorian sat with his attorney, looking calm and composed in a way that made my stomach churn. He'd lost weight, I noticed. His face was leaner, more angular, but there was a strength in his posture that hadn't been there before. This ordeal had broken him down and rebuilt him into someone I barely recognized. All rise for the Honorable Judge Patricia Hendricks. The judge was a stern-looking woman in her 50s, with silver hair and sharp eyes that seemed to see straight through pretense to truth. She reviewed the case file with methodical precision before looking up at both parties. This is a dissolution of marriage between Dorian Harker and Lunelle Vereen Harker, with contested custody of minor child Nora Harker, age 9. Mr. Brennan, you may present your opening statement. Dorian's lawyer stood with the confidence of a man holding all the winning cards. Your Honor, this case is about a pattern of deception, betrayal, and abandonment of family responsibilities that has created an unsafe and unstable environment for a young child. Over the past 6 months, Mrs. Harker has engaged in an extramarital affair, committed time fraud against her employer, and consistently prioritized her own desires over the welfare of her daughter. Each word was a nail in my coffin, delivered with surgical precision. We will present evidence showing that Mrs. Harker used marital funds to conduct her affair, lied repeatedly to her husband and child about her whereabouts, and created such emotional turmoil in the home that her daughter's academic performance and mental health have suffered significantly. My lawyer's response was weak by comparison, focusing on my rights as a mother and characterizing my relationship with Felix as a friendship that may have crossed boundaries during a difficult period in the marriage. Then came the evidence. Bank records showing charges at hotels I'd forgotten about. Credit card statements documenting dinners with Felix, while I'd told Dorian I was working late. Text messages between Felix and me that had somehow been recovered, including ones where I'd complained about feeling trapped in my marriage. Mrs. Harker, Dorian's lawyer said when it was my turn to testify, did you or did you not tell Mr. Trenton that you regretted marrying my client? The question hung in the air like poison gas. I could feel every eye in the courtroom on me, including Dorian's steady gaze. I may have said something like that during a difficult time, but yes or no, Mrs. Harker? Did you tell your lover that you regretted marrying your husband? He wasn't my lover, I protested, but the damage was done. The parade of witnesses was devastating. Gina testified about my behavior at family dinners, my obvious discomfort around Dorian, the way I'd check my phone constantly and make excuses to leave early. She stopped being present, Gina said, her voice steady but sad. Even when she was physically there, her mind was somewhere else. Nora noticed. Children always notice. Janet from work testified about my suspicious absences, the personal calls during business hours, the way I'd bragged about my trainer, and the attention he gave me. She seemed to think she was getting away with something, Janet said, avoiding my eyes, like it was all a game. But it was Nora's school counselor who delivered the killing blow. Nora's grades dropped significantly, starting in September, Mrs. Patterson testified. She became withdrawn, stopped participating in class activities, and expressed anxiety about her parents' relationship. When asked about home, she said Mommy and Daddy didn't talk anymore, and that Mommy was always on her phone or going out. Did she express any specific concerns about her mother's behavior? Brennan asked. She asked if it was normal for mommies to have secret friends that daddies didn't know about. She was clearly confused and distressed by the tension in the home. I wanted to disappear into the floor. My own daughter, testifying through a counselor about the damage I'd caused. The little girl I'd claimed to love above all else, collateral damage in my selfish pursuit of validation. When Dorian took the stand, his testimony was calm, factual, and devastating. I tried to save our marriage, he said quietly. I suggested counseling multiple times. I asked Lunelle directly if there was someone else. She looked me in the eye and lied every single time. What made you start documenting your wife's activities? Brennan asked. I found a hotel receipt in her gym bag. When I asked about it, she said she'd grabbed the wrong bag at work, but it was dated on a Saturday, and she'd told me she was at the gym that day. His voice remained steady, professional. That's when I realized I needed to protect myself and my daughter. How did you feel when you discovered the extent of your wife's deception? For the first time, Dorian's composure cracked slightly. Betrayed, not just by the affair, but by the lies. The way she made me doubt my own instincts. The way she put our daughter in the middle of her deception. The final blow came when my mother took the stand as a character witness. I'd begged her not to, but she'd insisted she could help my case. She couldn't. Under cross-examination, Vivian's bias became obvious and damaging. You encouraged your daughter to pursue this relationship with Mr. Trenton, didn't you? Brennan asked. I encouraged her to be happy. Even though she was married? Marriage shouldn't be a prison. So you advised a married woman with a child to prioritize her own happiness over her family's stability. My mother's pause was fatal. I wanted what was best for Lunelle, and you believed what was best for her was to have an affair. The objection came too late. The damage was done. Judge Hendricks took a brief recess before delivering her ruling. I sat in the hallway, watching Dorian surrounded by his family, Gina, Tristan, even some colleagues from school who'd come to support him. I sat alone except for my lawyer and my mother, who was finally beginning to understand the magnitude of what I'd lost. When we reconvened, Judge Hendricks's voice was firm and final. After reviewing all evidence and testimony, this court finds that the marriage between Mr. Harker and Mrs. Harker is irretrievably broken due to the respondent's adultery and abandonment of marital responsibilities. The words washed over me like ice water. Regarding custody of the minor child, this court's primary concern is the best interests of Nora Harker. The evidence shows a pattern of deception and instability on the part of the respondent that has already negatively impacted the child's emotional well-being and academic performance. I gripped the edge of the table, knowing what was coming. Therefore, this court awards primary physical custody to the petitioner, Dorian Harker. The respondent, Lunelle Harker, is granted supervised visitation every other weekend, with the possibility of modification after 1 year of demonstrated stability. Supervised visitation. The words hit like a physical blow. Furthermore, given the respondent's current unemployment and the financial irregularities that led to her termination, she's ordered to pay child support in the amount of $400 per month, with the court retaining jurisdiction to modify this amount based on future employment. The gavel came down with the finality of a coffin lid closing. As the courtroom emptied, I watched Dorian gather his papers with the same methodical care he'd brought to building his case against me. He looked up once, our eyes meeting across the space that now felt like an ocean. There was no triumph in his expression, no vindication or revenge, just the quiet dignity of a man who'd fought for his daughter and won. He walked out of that courtroom with his head held high, surrounded by people who loved and supported him, while I sat alone in the wreckage of my choices, finally understanding the true cost of everything I'd thrown away.